What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. And just like I promised in the video before the previous video, before the car show, this is going to be the oil pan video of how I'm going to be replacing that and fixing the oil drain on the turbo. So the reason why you're seeing future me instead of me from, that day doing the video is because I kind of just wanted to get to work. I think it was like 3 or 4 p.m. at that time, so it was going to be sunset pretty soon, so I just kind of wanted to start getting to work, so I just kind of put that off for the future, as in now. So I'm just going to go ahead and let the video play, and I guess I'll see you guys after the video ends, and I can explain to you what it is that I was doing and why I was doing it. Alright, so here's the problem. So you see how in the intercooler this whole thing is covered in oil? And the whole blow-off valve and just the whole intercooler piping, that's all covered in oil. That I'm not too worried about because that's just from the crankcase vent right there, so that's not an issue, but this right here surely is, because look at all that crap. So that's what I'm going to be trying to fix today. So the issue with this crap is that the oil pan has a very bad oil drain done to it. So I took off the oil pan off my old engine and I've adjusted it to my liking and just gave it that 45-degree angle right there, just so that the drain is perfect. So I also ordered a nice hose right here, or a tube that's made specifically for this, for the oil, for hot temperatures, all that stuff. So if you're interested, I can link the parts in the description, so just ask me. So what I'm going to be starting with is by removing the wheels, and having these studs makes it so much easier to take these off. A quick tip: always try to put the bolts that you took off before, or nuts or anything like that, always try to put it back, because it's going to be a lot easier to find them in the long run, and you're not going to be worried about losing them or misplacing them, or something like that. So just a quick tip, I always try to follow that rule just because it makes my life a lot easier. Alright, so next, since we are working with the oil pan, I'm going to try and remove all the oil, because the less oil there is, the less of a mess you're going to have. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now. By the way, you're gonna always want to try and have like a paper towel or a rag or something just to clean up all the extra mess. So I'm gonna try to show you guys why exactly I'm doing this, and I think you can tell right there, all of this piping stuff right there, and then the intercooler, and all this fan shrouding, all that stuff right there, it's covered in oil. And it's all coming from the blow-off valve right here, because it opens up and lets all the oil out, and that's because my drain is really bad on the turbo over there. So it doesn't have, there's no pressure over there, so it doesn't pressurize, and it just kind of full sends, and it doesn't have the ability to push it all the way through, so it just kind of goes back into the air intake system and starts slobbering oil all throughout the car. I did my best to kind of clean the sway bar over here and the power steering, some of the lines over here, but you can still see it's pretty jocked up over here. So I'm going to try to take as much as I can off and just kind of, I guess, pressure wash it, or maybe just clean it after I'm done with this whole job and get it on the lift and pressure wash the whole underbody of the car. So anytime I take on a project, I try to kind of make it a rule of thumb to make a game plan. And here so far I took off the wheels and I drained the oil. So now I got to put the plug back into the oil pan, move the oil out of here, and I'm going to start off with taking off the cross member. And then I guess I'm just going to move on to these control arms in the front. So like I said before, always try to put the bolts back into their spots, just so that you don't lose them anymore. This also makes it a whole lot easier to find where the bolts go, just in case that it takes a few days for you to do the job or something. This is how I usually do it. So since I'm going to need to take the subframe off, I'm also going to need to take off the steering rack, or kind of move it aside, and I'm also going to need to unbolt the control arms right here. So that's going to require me to unbolt them right there, which I already did on both sides, and I'm going to have to get this top part. For the steering rack, I believe it's size 15 on the bottom and at the top as well on both sides, so I'm gonna get to that, and then I'm also gonna start unbolting the sway bar, which should be size 13. All right, so I have a little update. I took off the breather valve right here, or the long tube right here, and I also took out the dipstick. The dipstick should just be held with a 10mm bolt, and you just pop it right off. This is capped off right here because for turbo cars it's no longer necessary, so I just kind of capped that off. Next, I went ahead and I took off the serpentine belt. It's loose over here, so what you're gonna have to use is a size 17, and you're gonna have to tighten it, so in the R position, so turn it to the right clockwise, and you're gonna have to get the belt and slip it off. So basically, I'll show you the diagram right here. So you use that pulley right there, then you start tightening it and you slip off the belt. So then after that, what I went ahead and done is I took off the power steering pump, which is held in by only 3 bolts. So as you can see, 1, 2 right there, and then a third one right over there. So only 3 bolts, nothing too hard. That's what I did. And then I managed to slip out the steering rack that's held in by a size 13. And you know, that just kind of slides out after you take out the bolts on the bottom and that 113 from the actual spline. So it'll come out like that. Nothing too hard, but as soon as you get that done, what you're gonna need to do is you're gonna need to secure the engine from the top. I'm gonna use an engine hoist, strap it to this hook right here. It should give me enough stabilization, which I can then start loosening the bottom bolts right here of the subframe. So once I stabilize the engine, I'm gonna go ahead and get back to you guys. All right, so the engine hoist is in place and I already unbolted the engine mounts. You can't see it from here, but I promise you that I did. So I couldn't remove this control arm. I'm gonna see if I need to or not, but I don't know, we'll see. And don't mind the mess over here with the power steering pump because I'm gonna be looking into all those lines anyway because I don't know, something's leaking and I don't like when something leaks, so probably gonna replace every single line, so don't look at that. But anyway, right now, as for the subframe, I started breaking loose these subframe bolts. I already broke these 2 loose. I already put strain on the engine, made sure that it picked up just a little bit. And so as for right now, what I'm gonna be doing is kind of unbolting these bolts from the bottom and letting the subframe drop. I took out the turbo lines. If you're not running a turbo, you're not gonna have these, so don't worry about it. I just kind of took them out to clean them up a little bit and, you know, just to get them out of the way so there's less things to worry about. But here's how she's looking right now. Subframe's still in there. You could take it out, but it's not necessary, so I'm just not gonna mess with it. I kind of left it in there. But anyway, I'm ready to take the oil pan out. I have full access everywhere, and I'm just gonna get right to it, and I'll catch you guys right after I take it off. Okay guys, so I got all the bolts unbolted, even the ones that are far down over there. Those were a bit of a hassle, but still got them. It's still sitting in one spot. I'm pretty sure it's because of the heat, but okay, so legit just yanked off the whole oil pan, and here's what we have. You know, just the regular stuff, nothing special. That's it. It's kind of cool to see into the engine though. All right, but I'm gonna try to wiggle it out. All right, so common sense leads me to think that this thing should be pulled out this way towards the back, since you know this is a big barrel, so it'll make more sense logically to kind of pull it back this way rather than just kind of throw the whole thing over the subframe. I guess this is why it's necessary to take it off, but if I'm not able to, that's what I'll do. Oh. Looks like this is gonna be easy peasy. All right, so another little update. I already got the new oil pan on, and I started with the back bolts. There's the back 3 bolts that go to the transmission. And then I'm gonna start putting on a bolt over here, and I'm gonna start going through by a pattern just to tighten it all the way around so it seals perfectly. I'll get back to you guys when I'm done with that. All right, so it's the second day here. Last night, really quickly, I just kind of bolted up the oil pan. I didn't lock anything down, but I just kind of put them into place so I know which bolt goes where. I'm ready to start tightening them down through a pattern, so that's what I'm gonna be working on right now. All right, so all the bolts are tightened down. Everything's sitting nice and tight. I think I'm gonna start putting the subframe back together. I have to put the engine mounts on, and from there on, I guess just work backwards from what I used to do. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. I also have to reclock the turbo because I have a turbo drain on it, so that has to be readjusted. So that's the drain right there, as you can see. It could have used to go a little bit further to the left, so counterclockwise, but I think that'll do just fine. Compared to how my old turbo drain was, this is much better. All right, so right before I take a break, I decided that I'm gonna give you guys a little update. So here's what I did so far. First off, I started by putting on the subframe, fully tightened it down. Then I switched to the engine mounts, tightened those down on both sides as well. And I just made sure it sits perfectly flush. Then what I moved on to is I started putting the power steering stuff back into place. So I put the power steering pump, as you can see it right there. I didn't tighten it down because, I don't know, there was a little hose that came undone right there, this one right there. So I wasn't sure if that was gonna be in the way or not, and it's not, so I just kind of put that in the way right now. Next, I kind of moved the steering rack back into place, let it sit there without any bolts though, because I'm gonna still try to clean off these power steering lines, and I'm gonna try and unbolt some of them and put in new washers and stuff like that. just clean it up just so I can know where anything is leaking, if it's leaking at all. So just trying to make the car as best as it can be. All right, so it's time for another little update. Here's the progress that I've made so far. I put the sway bar in, I put the power steering pump on, I put the belt on. Also, I put the steering rack on as well, as you can see right there, those 2 bolts. Just a quick tip for those bolts, by the way. If you do end up putting the bolts back in, which you should, make sure that the bolts are pointing down, so they go from the top down, because these are known for unscrewing and the bolt will just fly off and the steering rack will just be loose and play around. So definitely recommend to put the bolts down, because if it does come undone, then the steering rack is still going to be in place, because there's going to be the bolts. That's going to be virtually impossible to push itself up. If you can tell from the beginning of the video, I kind of wiped down the whole underbody of the car. There's still a few spots left, like in here and just a few little other spots, but for the most part I wiped it down, like the subframe, that piping right there, the steering rack, you know, the sway bar, all of that stuff. So it looks a lot cleaner now, and especially with the oil pan being nice and clean over there. I also went ahead and cleaned up the power steering lines, because I want to know where that's leaking from, so I can change those out in the future. But so far so good. Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and start clocking the turbo on the other side, because that's what I'm gonna need to do since the car is turboed and the drain was bad from the beginning. So that's what I'm gonna get on right now. So here we are a couple hours later. I'm basically finished with the whole thing. There's a couple things that I need to do, like put on the X-sprays, put in coolants, put in oil. Oh, I also need to put these in. Almost forgot about those. Okay. Yeah, so not much left to do, just this kind of stuff left. I also wanted to touch on the guibo back there, because it's not sitting correctly and I wanted to fix that. So I'm gonna take a little break and I'm gonna get back to it, and I'll let you guys know after the next update what happened. So if you're still confused as to why I did the oil pan swap instead of just replacing the fitting at the bottom, it's because the fitting wasn't sitting in the right spot and it wasn't optimal for the proper drain. So how the turbo works, there's pressure going into the turbo for oil, but once it drains out, there's no pressure there. It just kind of flows out, I guess, like downstream. So, and there was a very big J hook at the bottom of it, which causes the oil to get stuck at the bottom and just kind of puddle there at the bottom of the oil line, and then it will kind of force itself in there and cause a lot of back smoke from the car. And that's also very bad for the turbo seals, which could cause those to blow, and you would either need a new sensor cartridge or you would need to replace the turbo. So in light of saving this turbo, I just decided to redo the whole setup. Also, when I pulled off the fitting off the turbo itself, there was some sort of gasket maker on the fitting which clogged the hole in there. Like you can see in this picture right here what I'm talking about, and it really slowed down the turbo drain. So that's what caused my car to backfire and smoke a lot. So I hope that that helps you understand what I was doing and why I was doing it this way. And that's basically all I have for this video, and I guess I'll just see you guys in the next one.